Welcome to Apologetics and Prophecy, the official podcast of Calvary Solid Ground, a remnant church in Orangevale, California. I am Pastor Jed, and I will be your host as we bring you Bible studies and updates put through an apologetical and biblical lens to see just how close we are to the return of our Lord. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome you this Friday afternoon to our another weekly prophecy update that we do here at Apologetics and Prophecy, and we're so thankful that you joined us today. And we're just going to look at some stories today that we see a theme that is building that is very obvious to us that are Christians, those that are prophecy students, those that see the system being put in place. And we see, as we're looking at the turmoil that's happening in the world and all of the things that the Bible predicted the earth would look like before Jesus came again, we see two forces building their kingdoms. We have God, who is allowing mankind to have his last stand. And by doing that, by moving the hand off of man and allowing man to run by himself, we see the chaos that ensues from sinful man trying to rule himself. But we also see another force, and that is Satan himself trying to build his kingdom. And it is going to be a counterfeit kingdom. And these two opposing forces we can see are working in the world today so that we can know when we read stories, when we see the things that we're looking at today in this edition, that we know these things are happening on purpose. That nothing that is happening in the world today is happening by accident. On one side, it's predicted by the Lord. It is what he said in his word would happen in the last days. But there's an evil side, a side that is allowing and doing these things on purpose to bring about what they see is their future utopia, their heaven on earth, their man with the plan that's going to come on the scene, as Jan Markell calls the Mr. Fix-It. So in order to have a Mr. Fix-It to come on the scene, in order for there to be that one person to come on and have the answers for everything, there needs to be a continually ever-existent problem and chaos to allow these things to happen, to allow us to, or for the world to give up its rights and its freedoms, to allow the things that are being put in place to happen. So we can look at these stories and we know they're happening on purpose. And I was reading a blog this week that really gave me some insight, and I started to do some research, some digging from one little line that somebody had mentioned in a blog. And I uncovered the fact that that a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about today is being done on purpose with a plan. And they are doing it because they have an end game. And Satan has an end game. And he is going, and all of this world system is being included in it. And you may think that it's happening by accident. You may think that the things that are happening are just, natural things that happen, but they're not. They're being done on purpose for nefarious plans. And we'll show you that because, nearby where I live in Sacramento, California, is the city of San Francisco. And over the last 5 to 10 years, because of the leadership problems that they've had there, and on purpose, Soros has put his people in there, that they have decriminalized everything, and the cities have become unlivable. And of course, we know COVID forced a lot of people out to work from their homes, and people are fleeing the cities. And nothing could be more obvious of that fact than this story from Fox Business this week that says San Francisco Nordstrom closes after more than 30 years in business amid retail exodus. Market Street Rack, which was located across the street from Nordstrom, closed earlier this summer. We've spent more than 35 years serving customers in downtown San Francisco, building relationships with them and investing in the local community, the message said. But as many of you know, the dynamics of the downtown San Francisco market have changed dramatically over the past several years, impacting customer foot traffic to our stores and our ability to operate successfully. So that's just the kind business jargon to saying we aren't making any more money. So it's just costing. And of course, I saw another article that was posted online from about a week or two ago where the Nordstrom in San Francisco got ransacked by looters that stole $100,000 worth of merchandise. So how can you do business in a city like that allows that kind of crime and lawlessness to abound? And the Bible told us that stuff would happen. You know, that would be and it's really more of the symptom of the heart of man that God was showing us. But in reality, though, because of what they're proposing to do, they're allowing it and it's being done on purpose. And so, but you know, about a month ago, there was another Fox Business article that kind of highlights, you know, the what was happening to lead up to this huge store in San Francisco closing. And this article says AT&T, Westfield Mall, Nordstrom lead San Francisco downtown exodus. Data published by the San Francisco Office of Economic Workforce and Development showed weekly office attendance in San Francisco for the week of June 7th averaged 45%, a level it had been hovering around for some time. For the quarter ending in March, the city's office space vacancy came in at about 26%. And I think that's a very conservative number. I think it's very much higher. You go down Market Street today and almost 95% of all the businesses are closed on Market Street. I grew up in San Francisco, and Market Street was always the center of all. It was exactly that, Market Street. And you could go down there and there was never open office spaces. It was full of people shopping and doing things. And just to see it come down to this it's a completely different city than it was back in the 70s when I lived there. And so, but of course, you know, we know that because crime is up in the city, that's happening, but it's not happening just in San Francisco. This is a national thing and actually a global thing that's happening. But Daily Mail in UK mentioned this about, you know, the Dem-run cities in the United States. And it says, when is enough going to be enough? How residents and businesses are fleeing Dem-run cities in droves after lives and livelihoods are being threatened as homeless camps continue to grow. Hundreds of residents and businesses are fleeing Democrat-run cities across America in droves after having their livelihoods threatened by the growing number of homeless camps and soaring rates of crime. Homeless encampments are taking over liberal-run cities like Portland, Los Angeles, Seattle, and San Francisco, with frustrated residents describing soaring violence, daylight drug use, and no response from police officers due to cuts. Furious residents and business owners are accusing city leaders of turning a blind eye to the crisis and not addressing the long-term issue by helping the homeless get accommodation. Well, it's not the homeless. It is the cry. It kind of goes hand in hand with the Soros-backed DAs that are being funded to be elected into these cities, and then turning a blind eye on all crime and not arresting people for crime and not charging people for crime, and then promoting the defund the police movements. And so the city councils are defunding the police, and so this is what you're going to get. But we have to understand this is all being done on purpose. Why is Soros putting all this money into destroying Dem-run cities? Why are they purposely allowing the chaos and all the things that are happening to cause people to flee the cities? Why are we seeing these things? Well, one of the things that we know is because of all of this, that there is a real estate bubble, commercial real estate bubble that's getting ready to break. And then this article that just came out this last week in Washington Post business section says how the urban doom loop could pose the next economic threat. A commercial real estate apocalypse, particularly in mid-sized cities, could spiral into the broader economy. In Indianapolis, the technology giant Salesforce is paring back a quarter of its office space in the tallest building in Indiana, where it has been a key tenant for the past 6 years. In Atlanta, the private investment giant Starwood Capital defaulted in a $212 million mortgage on a 29-story office tower. And in Baltimore, a landmark business sold for $24 million last month, roughly $42 million less than it fetched in 2015. So you can see, and it goes on to say, all across the country, downtowns, office spaces, and shopping centers are at risk of becoming ground zero for a new economic hazard, the urban doom loop. The fear is that a commercial real estate apocalypse could spiral out and slow commerce, wrecking local tax revenue in the process. Ever since the pandemic drove a boom in remote work, people working from home, not needing to be in the office anymore. Hubs such as New York and San Francisco have drawn attention for their empty offices in previously bustling skyscrapers. But many economists are even more worried about mid-sized cities that have fewer ways to offset the blow when a major company slashes office space. The sale price of a building craters, or a downtown turns into a ghost town. And so we can start seeing a pattern arise. Why would they, what happens usually whenever there's a real estate collapse? We saw this in 2007, where the everyday people, the mid-sized cities, the middle class, the people that fund most of the economy basically lose because of this crash. It happened in the housing market in 2007, 2008. And what happened? Well, was the people that had all the money, the big shots, the corporations, the people that could afford, that had extra cash and capital, went and scooped up all these properties for next to nothing and made a ton of money. And that's what, the economy finally came out. The real estate market finally came back up because people made a lot of money, and they made a lot of money on people's losses. And so we see this happening in these cities where they're purposely destroying them and causing the real estate market to crash. But we believe, and we can see, and we're going to show here in a minute, that there is this there's going to come in these companies, these big corporations that are going to come in and scoop up all of this property for pennies on the dollar, for a purpose and for a reason. And what could that be? Well, we already know that the fire in Maui, there's been a lot of controversy about the fire in Maui, and we know that there were people that within the first week, within the first few days, there was people with a lot of money, people that that had a lot of money that came in and offered to buy the properties of those people that had their homes destroyed. And then even this article says, this local article says, Lahaina was expensive before the fire. Some worry rebuilding will price them out. And so, but we've been, as soon as you say anything, whenever you ask any questions about this fire, and that should, that's why we bring this up today. Anytime we bring up anything that we question what's going on, when we get severe pushback, when, before you can even finish your question, they're shouting conspiracy theorists, shutting down our accounts, turning off our YouTube channels. Before we can even get the question out, we're not even saying one or the other. We're just asking a question about what happened. And we're constantly, called conspiracy theorists. And we know there's a deeper, more nefarious thing happening in the background. We saw it with the pandemic. We saw it with anytime you ask one question about anything they're doing, you can't say anything bad about Dr. Fauci, or you're one of those crazy nuts, right? When all of this truth is coming out now that we were right. And so we should know when it comes to this Maui fire, and of course, one of the things that we have talked about, and this is kind of building my case today, is that, that they want to turn Maui into a smart island, a smart city. And of course, the moment that we said that, the moment that came out of our mouth, where even the mayor who had alluded to it, a video came up where he said that, that they wanted to rebuild Maui into a smart city. And then they said, oh, that's all a conspiracy theory, right? Well, all you have to go is to their own government. People think that we're stupid, that we can't scroll past the first 5 options on Google to actually get to government websites and their own places that the search engines pick up their own language that they're saying. And of course, this Maui County .gov that you can go to, Maui County, the .gov site where they have their general plan for 2030. There's your 2030, okay? Right away, that should bring you and I know what that means, right? General plan for 2030. And the overview is the Maui County General Plan is a long-term comprehensive blueprint for the physical, economic, environmental development, and cultural identity of the county. And then in another part, when you look down farther, it says the plan becomes the principal tool for the county and its citizens to use when evaluating public and private projects on Maui Island and their impacts on land use, the economy, the environment, infrastructure, and cultural resources. So it's just kind of a broad way, but you can go back and look. But I found this very interesting. They have been planning this part of the general plan, part of Maui's, because, most of Hawaii is run by liberals, and they have already planned. They have already made Maui. They've already run the test case. They've already got Maui set up to be a smart city. So it's not a conspiracy theory, because this Japan has already put in all the money to make it. This article right here, it's the NEDO. This is the New Energy Industrial Technology Development Organization. It's called NEDO, Smart Community Case Study. And in their introduction on their PDF of this, that you can see right here in the thumbnail, is during the period between 2011 and 2016. Okay, that's 10 years ago, you guys. 10 years ago, they were already planning on working on making Maui a smart island. And it says there has been a smart community project called Jump Smart Maui, JSM, held on the island of Maui, USA, with the objective of effective utilization of renewable energy that had been penetrating on a larger scale and widespread development of electric vehicles. A smart community was constructed by Hawaiian and Japanese stakeholders. There's your Sustainable Development Goal language from the WEF, headed by the New Energy and Industrial Technology Development Organization, that's NEDO, of Japan. Smart community is a social system that integrates advanced environmental and energy technologies and provides citizens belonging to the community with sustainable, safe, and secure society. We're talking about a smart city. In this context, it is important to have a perspective of what value has been provided to citizens by the smart community. Based on this viewpoint, this report summarizes suggestions for future smart community development derived from the activities and results of the Jump Smart Maui, especially from the engagement of citizens, i.e. volunteers who participated in this case study on EV-related programs. So this was basically more to do with electric vehicles, their charging stations, and the electricity being generated from renewable sources, but it is all integrated together by AI and by 5G and by all of these things. They've already got the island set up for a network as part of this case study. And so it's already there. And we know that in these cities that are having all of these problems, that are having all of this crime, that they're already bringing in the ideas to change them into smart cities. And we can see some of the structure that is being set up and for the reasoning why, because this Axios.com article from August 7th is Dallas, a model smart city project bears fruit. And listen to this. By blitzing a troubled neighborhood with smart city technology, including AI cameras on street lights. We've been telling you about this, the 5G AIs on street lights. Oh, that's just a conspiracy theory. Here it is. They just did it in Dallas. On an ubiquitous Wi-Fi, Dallas officials have seen crime reduction and quality of life improvements that they hope to replicate elsewhere. So that's the point. The smart city is not only environmentally friendly, but it is AI connected with cameras, and you're spied on everywhere. Of course, you're going to reduce crime when you can see. And we also know, we've heard about the Minority Report type police force actions that they've already had by using AI in some of these cities. And so we see this is all happening on purpose. You can go to their own websites to show that there is a push for smart cities. So they started this push for smart cities, but there wasn't the full city engagement that they needed. You have to be all into this. It can't be a test, where one neighborhood or one block. It has to be the whole city to make it work, especially as we'll see here in a minute what they're really trying to do, where they need the whole community involved in this. So, so they come up with the idea, and now all of a sudden, since COVID, all of these cities are falling apart. All the real estate's crashing. Everybody's leaving. For what? For them to come in and scoop it up and begin this process of creating these cities that they want to create. You can just go to the Department of Homeland Security. Go to their own websites and see what they say about smart cities. And this from the DHS.gov about smart cities, it says the Department of Homeland Security, Science and Technology Directorate, and the National Institute of Standards and Technology jointly sponsored the 2018. See, it wasn't until after the pandemic when people started leaving the cities, and then the Soros DAs came in and the cities started to fall apart. They had already had desire to make all of these cities smart cities. So we can see that the Global Cities Team Challenge, so they made these challenges for these cities, which will focus on designing cyber security into smart city systems. That means that basically you can throw your privacy out the window. That yes, we make them environmentally friendly, but they're also connected to the grid of AI that is watching every move on every street, on every city, and making them more secure, reliable, resilient, and protective of privacy. Now, that's a big lie. You can't have protection of privacy if they're watching every move that you make. Launched in 2014, the GCTC helps communities partner with innovators using network technology to solve problems ranging from mass transit improvement to energy management to disaster response. The new phase of the GCTC, called the Smart and Secure Cities and Community Challenge, addresses the question of how communities can secure their complex device networks against cyber attacks while using these devices to improve community services. The partnership takes advantage of the strengths of each agency, NIST's ties to smart city ecosystems, and S&T Cybersecurity Division's connection to the cybersecurity industry. So the Department of Homeland Security is in the mix of these smart cities, and they're providing the challenge to these cities. You can just go to the Department of Transportation. Their own website has a whole page on smart cities. And it says in December 2015, we launched our Smart City Challenge, asking mid-sized cities. Remember, we just read about the economic commercial collapse of mid-sized cities, correct? Well, here we are. They're talking in 2015, they were already planning this. across America to develop ideas for an integrated, first of its kind, smart transportation system that would use data, applications, and technology to help people and goods move more quickly, cheaply, and efficiently. The challenge generated an overwhelming response. 78 applicant cities shared the challenge they face and ideas of how to tackle them. Then our 7 finalists worked out with DOT, the Department of Transportation, to further develop their ideas. Well, guess who the 7 cities were that were the finalists of this challenge in 2015? Austin, Texas, Columbus, Ohio, Denver, Colorado, Kansas City, Missouri, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Portland, Oregon, which is nothing but a mess, and then, of course, San Francisco, where we started today reading our stories. This is all on purpose, you guys. You go to their own websites. The challenges have been done. The framework has been set. They just need the city to comply. And you can't do that with, people that are with different viewpoints there in the city. But if you chase everybody out, depress the real estate, a savior comes in, buys up all the real estate, and then turns it into what we know as of now, which is the new thing called 15-minute cities. They're 15-minute, and you have to be a smart city to be a 15-minute city. Of course, they try to say that, we'll talk about what they're saying about what we're saying about it in a minute. But the United Nations has their own website and their own division that is pushing the 15-minute city, and it's the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. These are the people that put on the COPs, the COP27. Remember where now King Charles, when he was Prince Charles, said that, with trillions at his disposal, slept the cat out of the bag about the man on the scene that it's getting ready to take over. And so, of course, they have this blog on their website, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, on the 15-minute city. And it says, and listen to what we're reading here. This is really, they're not hiding what they're planning on doing. It says, with cities key to climate action, could a new concept of urban living help us reach the Paris Agreement targets? The American author Jane Jacobs once wrote that cities have the capability of providing something for everybody, only because and only when they are created by everybody. It's a point that has more resonance now than ever. As we look to reimagine how we live in our cities, both as a result of the urgent need to take climate action and the upgoing upheaval of the COVID-19 pandemic. How we live is, of course, continually changing. Once we lived transient lives before settling into villages, towns, and then cities. In the 20th century, suburban living became popular and the daily commute, and the emergence of central business districts was born. However, recent years have seen a growing awareness of how destructive to our own mental health as well as the environment a long daily commute can be. Indeed, all through the 20th century, writers such as Jane Jacobs rallied against the destructive influence of cars and urban sprawl. Gradually, things started to change with Copenhagen, the first European city to pedestrianize its main shopping street in 1961, an approach many other cities copied. As we moved toward the end of the 20th century, concerns rose over air pollution, and more cities enhanced their public transport networks and started building cycling lanes. It is vital that in a post-pandemic world, we recover better and ensure that rebuilding our economies features green solutions in our cities and everywhere else that will not only spur growth, but safeguard our future of the planet. And of course, AP News will come out, and you'll find all of this happening because they, as soon as we point out their dystopian nightmare that they think will save the planet as being exactly what it is, a dystopian nightmare, the news comes out and says, fact-focused conspiracies misconstrue 15-minute city idea. And of course, we have to read this article to see what the other side is saying to show you that When we see fact checks, we know that whatever they say is the opposite of what is true. And it says cities where people can live a short walk from work, school, and other daily essentials rather than braving traffic-clogged highways or long communities, utopian idea or dystopian nightmare? In 2023, apparently it depends on who you ask. Some conservative commentators and conspiracy theorists, see, there goes that word, are increasingly convinced the concept of a 15-minute city, an urban design principle recently embraced by cities ranging from Paris, France to Cleveland, Ohio, is the latest nefarious plot to curtail individual freedoms. You won't be able to use your own car on certain roads and highways without the government's permission and consent, claimed one Instagram user in a recent video that had been liked more than 5,400 times. You will be constantly monitored by surveillance cameras to ensure that you don't leave your designated residential zone without first being authorized to do so. Well, we just talked about their own words that infrastructure is going to be put in place. We just read it. But urban experts and city officials stress the idea has nothing to do with regulating people's movements or taking away other freedoms. In some cases, they say it's being wrongfully conflated with local plans to mitigate traffic-clogged roads. Hey, we're doing it for your convenience. We're doing this for you. Don't you understand that this is all to help you, to give you a better life? You know, we're not trying to take away your freedoms. Here's a closer look at the facts. Claim 15-minute cities are designed to restrict people's movements, increase government surveillance, and infringe on other individual rights. The facts. The urban planning concept is simply about building more compact, walkable communities where people are less reliant on cars. There's much more to it that we just read what it was all about. It was about, saving the planet and putting people in with surveillance and safety and cybersecurity, all of that. We already just read that, right? So they're trying to just say this simple fact that, they're only giving you half the truth. Do you know that? That's what these news sites do. That's what these fact checkers do. And of course, look at their own language that they use, how they treat us. It says the conspiracy theories took off late last year in the United Kingdom as the concept was conflated with an effort to impose new traffic restrictions and ease congestion in around the famous university community of Oxford. The city government of Oxfordshire approved a system of traffic filters for 6 busy roads on which drivers will need a special permit to travel during daytime hours. But Tony Ecclestone, a spokesperson for the Oxford City Council, said this county's initiative is separate from the county's endorsement of the 15-minute cities concept, which is a key part of a city planning document it's developing. He pointed to a fact sheet that the city and city governments issued jointly in December to set the record straight. The fact sheet states that the filters aren't physical barriers that will confine people to their local area, but instead traffic cameras that will photograph the license plates of any non-compliant drivers who could then be subject to fine. Well, isn't that taking away your freedoms? Drivers will still be able to travel to any part of the city at any time, but they may have to take a different route. And if not, you get a fine. And we already know that you're only allowed to leave your home or leave that area less than 100 times a year, or else you'll be fined $100. 100 pounds per thing. We know somebody who lives there who told Brandon Holhouse this. The 15-minute neighborhoods proposal, meanwhile, aims to ensure that every resident has all the essentials: shops, healthcare, parks within a 15-minute walk of their home. The fact sheet says the goal is to support and add services, not restrict them. Okay. And then this is how they feel about us, the people that are questioning these things, that even dare to say, maybe this is infringing on our rights. It says conspiracy theorists are tapping into COVID-19 pandemic era vitriol against lockdowns when they falsely portray the concepts as a climate lockdown, notes Carla Ratty, director of the Sensible City Laboratory at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. They're also drawing on far-right tropes about global-minded organizations pushing a socialist agenda and a great reset of society, he said. Indeed, a related conspiracy theory circulating online recently falsely claims the United Nations and the World Economic Forum will forcibly remove people living on polluted land and require them to live in smart cities. That's happening. That isn't a conspiracy theory. That is their plan. And we can, of course, we know that in this Blaze article that just came out after Hurricane, Idalia slammed Florida, Biden comes out and says, we're going to need a whole hell of a lot of money when speaking of climate change. So this recent speech that he said that we would need all this money from climate change, well, where is that money going to come from? We need to ask ourselves that. And there is an organization that we'll read a little bit here that is deep embedded, that has all the money, that is pushing all of this stuff that we're talking about. And that is a company called BlackRock. Harbinger Daily had this article this week by Alex Newman, and we're going to read a little bit of it. And it says, in depth, BlackRock sits at the apex of the deep state, holding unfathomable power to reshape the global economy. Despite what you may have heard, it is about much more than money. It always has been. The recent cultural transformation of corporate America, think Bud Light, Target, and Disney as some of the more recent examples, has shocked traditional Americans to the core. Suddenly, it seems that every major company in the nation has gone woke, promoting everything from man-made global warming alarmism to transgender mutilation of children's genitals and godless globalism and vicious race-mongering. It is all happening under the guise of improving environmental, social, and government scores and diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's the DEI metrics. Behind the scenes, quietly, there is a vast power responsible for pushing all this woke corporate fanaticism. It has a name, BlackRock. The world's largest asset manager, the corporate giant has estimated $10 trillion under management. For perspective, that has the gross domestic product of every country on the planet except the United States and China. It has more than the gross domestic product of every country on the planet except the United States and China. Something to think about. When the overlord of all its orders lesser mortals running Fortune 500 companies to jump in his annual letters to the CEO, business leaders around the world stand at its attention and ask, how high, sir? I don't want to get more into this article because we're running short on time here, and I want to get into a couple more things. But BlackRock has stakeholders in every company in the world. You could just go look at the stakeholders of a lot of the companies, and BlackRock amassed most of this, you guys, during what was known as the V-shaped recovery during the pandemic. When we saw everybody selling all of their stocks to all of these major corporations because they were afraid, out of fear because of the pandemic, the reason why it was V-shaped because BlackRock came in and bought all of these shares for all of these corporations and all of these stocks. So everything balanced back out. It was a quick V-shaped recovery, but the vacuum that was created by the selling of all these things was bought up by BlackRock. And now they have majority stake in most companies, and they can tell Target, Disney, and Bud Light what to do. They can tell them to say, hey, you're going to support this crazy agenda, whether it costs you money or not, because we're telling, and that's why when Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, says jump, then they say how high. And we know that if you go to the World Economic Forum, their own website, BlackRock is one of their organizations that support the WEF. It all ties back to Klaus Schwab, ties back to the United Nations, to all these things that we've been talking about. In 2015, that Larry Fink in 2015 wrote a blog on the World Economic Forum, and it says, how will the sharing economy reshape our spending? And of course, it's talking about, the rise of sharing apps where we don't really own anything, but we just rent them. We don't bother to have a car. And it goes, it says, when we talk about technology, frequently we're focused on how it makes our lives easier, but we often look past the way it can completely reshape the economy. When I was in China last month, I spoke to a group of business students about these ideas. He was already, he's buddy with China, and he's using their ESG score, all of those things that communist China is doing. BlackRock, Larry Fink is utilizing in the economy. And but in the end of this blog, he says in another 5 years, car sharing technologies could be replacing car ownership at a meaningful scale. But the heart of the WEF, the heart of their 2030 agenda is that you will own nothing and be happy. We don't need to own a car. We can just use car sharing. Or, why do we even need a car if we're living in a 15-minute smart city? We know that, of course, we know that Ukraine is in the mix of all this. They want to make Ukraine into a smart country. And how do we know that? Because BlackRock is lined up with the WEF. And now this FISM.TV article says Ukraine to join the World Economic Forum announces reconstruction deal with BlackRock Incorporated. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky announced plans to join the World Economic Forum in Davos, and this just happened earlier this year, and ongoing talks with BlackRock Incorporated to secure post-war funding to rebuild Ukraine on Wednesday. While details are even scanter for Ukraine's involvement with the WEF, the Russia-Ukraine war has been a topic of interest for the nonprofit's agenda this year. In particular, the WEF has begun talking about what Ukraine's eventual reconstruction should look like. This includes a push for being green, inclusive, and technology-driven. They want to turn it into a smart country. And, of course, we know that all of this is all part of the things that are going to happen. And, of course, we know that the World Economic Forum has this Global Future Council on the future of cities. You can go to their own website. And of course, the council description is cities are the engine of the global economy and home to a growing majority of the world's population. In the face of increasing global challenges from inequality to climate change, how can cities advance and inform more inclusive and sustainable models of urban development? The Global Future Council on Cities 2023 to 2024, we're at right now, will focus on the urban affordability crisis, a widespread and multifaceted global challenge that highlights systemic injustices and deepens inequalities. The council will cause and advance promising interventions that catalyze impact and an action to address this crisis that can be used by public, private, and city society stakeholders to drive change. So we can read from all of this that they are using the destruction or the degradation or the falling apart of all of these cities and mid-sized cities, everybody exiting and leaving, and then the coming commercial real estate collapse for BlackRock to come in like they did during the pandemic, to be the savior, to buy up all of these things, and using the ideas of this Global Future Council on Cities to bring about this 15-minute smart city dystopian. It's not utopian, it's dystopian, and force the people to move into these cities. They're going to be driven to go live in these cities. They're going to make it so hard for us that live on the fringes, that live in the other places. And a lot of times, in order for us to be able to, I know people that live in other places that just can't afford to live there. And they're going to make it, affordable, and they're going to make it, with universal basic income. You don't need to go more than 15 minutes to find anything. And it's going to seem like the best deal in the world, and they're going to go there. And I leave today with this 2030 agenda from the World Economic Forum, one of their documents, and this is the Global Future Council on Cities Inclusion 2022 document. And right away it says addressing the vulnerables of key groups and addressing building these cities, building these smart cities. They're going to address the vulnerabilities, and that's women, low-income residents, disabled people, migrants, refugees, and internally displaced persons, older residents, city children and youth, informal sector, racial, ethnic, and religious minorities, indigenous communities, of course, the LGBTQIA plus residents, people affected by time poverty, and people in vulnerable occupations. And I'm just going to read a little bit of this before we close today. It says, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the new Urban Agenda, and the Paris Agreement are crucial guiding tools in shaping sustainable, inclusive, and resilient urban development. The objective is a barrier-free city, valuing all people, their needs, and contributions equally, and jointly and cohesively addressing the spatial, social, and economic dimensions of a urban development. In such a city, it's this: every citizen enjoys the benefits of equality and has an opportunity to live and grow. The United Nations Decade of Action to deliver the Sustainable Development Goals calls for greater synergies with the people and rights of the most vulnerable in our urban communities at the heart of policies and intervention. Only then can we truly build back better. We tried to tell you that was a World Economic Forum statement that they forced Joe Biden, because they are his handlers, leaving no one and no place behind. And so we see that it is all a plan, that they have it all figured out, that there are two forces working at hand. One, God taking his hand off mankind because they have rejected him, rejected his leadership, rejected his standards, and decided to go at it by themselves. So all of the cities are crumbling apart, but there is another force, the dark, demonic, satanic side that is setting up the system for the global governments, for the Antichrist, that is pushing to allow these taking advantage of the lawlessness, the destruction, the exodus of these cities, to scoop them up by somebody who is demonically inspired, like Larry Fink of BlackRock, to purchase these things and use the agendas by the Department of Homeland Security, by the Department of Transportation, by the UN, by the UN, by the World Economic Forum. We just read from all of their websites their desire to do these things, and they're all pushed upon, saving the planet, making equal space for everyone, that, we will redistribute the wealth so that there is no rich and poor, that everybody has an equal state. And it sounds like a utopia, but we know that it's heading someplace. Revelation 13, verses 15 through 17 says and this is speaking of the false prophet, he was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand and on their forehead, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark of the name of the beast or the number of his name. Of course, he's not going to do this by, by slavery and enforcement. He's going to do it by attraction and offer. And we know that because in Daniel 8:25, speaking of the character of this beast, it says, through his cunning he shall cause deceit to prosper under his rule, and he shall exalt himself in his heart, and he shall destroy many in their prosperity. So he is going to use deceit and cunning. He is going to promise them a utopia. He's going to show them this new smart city, this new utopia that is available to all. And we know that it'll ultimately lead up to a dystopian nightmare where we can't buy or sell unless we worship the beast. But we're already stuck in this system. He's going to promise them peace on earth and utopia. He's going to promise them everything that Christ offers us, but without Christ. He is going to be the counterfeit Christ. He can only counterfeit what God has already said in his word. He cannot make anything up that's original. So as the world is setting up its utopia, you and I that are in Christ need to understand that that old slewfoot is only copying what God has already planned for us. Because we know in Revelation 21, it says, "Now I saw a new heaven and a new earth, and the first heaven and the first earth had passed away. Also there was no more sea. Then I, John, saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God." Of course, we know that after the description of the city, it says that in verse 24 of chapter 21 of Revelation, it says, "And the nations of those who are saved shall walk in its light, and the kings of the earth bring their glory and honor into it. Its gates shall not be shut at all by day." You can go in and out as you please. You're not stuck in its dystopian nightmare. There'd be much more than 15 minutes. You'll be able to spend all of eternity exploring the vastness of God's creation, not stuck in your little space. It says that there shall be no night there. Its gates shall not be shut at all by day. They shall bring the glory and the honor of the nations into it. But there shall by no means enter it anything that defiles or causes an abomination or a lie, but only those who are written in the Lamb's book of life. So there is a city for us, and it's not a 15-minute city. It's not the Klaus Schwab dystopian prison city that he has planned for all of us, but a city that God has prepared for us. As Abraham was looking forward, he says that they were looking for a city that has foundations, whose builder and maker is God. We have a city prepared for us, but only for those whose names are written in the Lamb's book of life. Are you still looking for mankind to be your answer? Are you looking to the government to provide your hope? Are you thinking that these UN sustainable goals are not too bad? Are you thinking that 2030 sounds like a pretty good place to be? You are in for a rude awakening. It is not. It is Satan's plan to pull the foundation that will be provided for the final Antichrist kingdom that will come on this earth, which will be destroyed by the breath of the Lord at his coming. But we who put our faith and trust in Christ, in the finished work of Jesus on the cross, we have turned from our sins and put our faith and trust in him, which there's still time for you to do today. And you lay down your lives before Jesus, and you receive the salvation that he's given to you, and the fact that he has defeated sin and death for us, and took upon the judgment that we deserve for our sins upon himself, and has given us hope. We have a city that has foundations, whose builder and maker is God, that is waiting for us. It is a new Jerusalem, and that it will be the best city ever. One that Satan can try to replicate, but will never be what God has prepared for us. So I just want to share that with you. We see all these things happening. They have a plan and a purpose, and they're filling that plan. But we should know that when we see these things begin to happen, that we look up and know that our redemption draws near. So keep your eyes up, folks and Christians, and just know that the Lord is coming again soon. And I want to end this as I start every update. Maranatha. If you have been blessed by this podcast, please subscribe and share to help get the word out in these last days. If you'd like more information or to contact us, please go to calvarysolidground.com. God bless.